Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. It is almost New Year's Eve. It's amazing how fast this year has gone. It just seemed like we were in January. And, I actually got to go to one of the inauguration events in Washington, and I'm like, wow, it's already December again. So I don't know if you guys feel like time has been traveling super fast, but yeah, it's definitely feeling like that. So thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News, where we're bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. And again, my name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And let's start with our video for our Kids Corner.
With a big love for his shiny red BMX bike. One sunny morning, he saw a group of kids racing their bikes in the park. He wanted to join, but something felt off. One boy, Jake, challenged Victor. "If you lose, you have to give me your bike." Victor was excited to prove himself, but he didn't think carefully about the bet. Before the race started, Victor's dad, Mr. Carter, arrived. Seeing the boys, he asked Victor, "Are you sure about this?" Victor explained, and Mr. Carter said, "Son, never let someone else control your choices. Winning is fun, but think about the risks." Victor thought about his dad's words. He decided to race, but changed the terms. "No bets. Let's race for fun." Jake was annoyed, but agreed. The race was on. The race was thrilling, and Victor gave it his all. He didn't win, but everyone cheered for his effort. Later, Jake admitted, "That was a great race. No bets needed." Victor learned that winning isn't everything. Making good choices matters more. Sometimes controlling your options is more important than winning. Make choices that you'll be proud of, no matter the outcome.
Yeah, and that is something, we should definitely take into the year coming up. You know, make choices that are going to give you a good outcome. Sometimes, you go into things emotionally, and I definitely see a lot of people in positions of authority making emotional decisions as opposed to very proper ones that affect a lot of us, right? And even themselves. So, we definitely have to keep them in prayer, right? But when I saw that video, I was like, yeah, sometimes you have to be aware of the terms because winning isn't everything, right? We definitely want to be in a good position. I'm not saying I want to, be on the losing end of things. We need to always keep ourselves in a good position, but make sure that the outcomes, right, are beneficial. So with that, let's do our daily mantra. And I found this little card and I kind of blew it up. So I hope you guys can see it okay, on how to honor God with our bodies. And so this is more of a consolidated, how should I say it? The prayer that I was reading from was pretty much the outline that we have in church, right? So this is a consolidation of that. And so this is how to honor God with my body. Um, Please, God, help me, my mind, guard my thoughts. God, help me to fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect my ears. Help me listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the door of my lips. God, help my hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. God, protect my reproductive organs. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect my feet as I walk along your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. I'm kind of glad I found the card because even though I was reading through that outline, right, very similarly, this is a little bit more consolidated view. So I hope you guys were able to get a screen grab of that because it's not a link that I can send, but maybe I can figure out something. But if you want me to email this to you, just send me an email to unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com and I will get you a copy. So, again, good morning and thank you for joining us. And so now we're going to get into the news. Now, this is Tell It All Tuesday. So, there's going to be just a lot of, I'm not going to call it random news, but it's going to just be things that I've pulled and said, okay, let's talk about this, let's talk about that. And so it might seem a little out of sequence. I like doing sequential shows if you haven't noticed that. I like particular themes, but that's just kind of how I like to get down. So the first video we're going to check out is credit cycling, and this isn't something that I was aware of, but apparently if you max out your card and pay it down and you do that frequently, right? They might see it as money laundering. And it's interesting because I remember I had met someone before I met my husband, and he would always pay his credit card off, well before his credit uh, card statement came. So if he spent like maybe, let's say, $100 or $200 on his card, he would pay it off. Now he wasn't maxing his card out. He was basically, he would use like less than maybe 5% of his credit card, or he'd pay it down to keep it at zero. But what it would do is it would keep his credit good, and then he would be eligible for the points, obviously. And then on top of that, it would look good on his credit score, because obviously when you let that debt roll over, right, even if it's a normal credit cycle, it will ding your credit and your credit will get lower. So let's check out this video just to see how credit cycling works.
Card, you need to watch this because banks are shutting down credit card accounts and it's leading to customers being sued.
So let me get this straight. Capital One is closing people's accounts for what they call credit cycling. If you purchase something and you pay it off, and then you purchase something again and you pay it off, they're considering that to be credit cycling, and then they're going to close your account?
A lot of people are doing this and not even realizing. I mean, even just our conversation, it's kind of like, why is this wrong?
Why is it wrong? Yeah.
So a lot of people are accidentally doing this, which is why it went kind of viral on social media, because people were responding saying, wow, I didn't even know that this was kind of against bank policy.
Now, many people that actually are card holders have no idea that this is against the rules. And many credit card companies have this as part of their policy, and it seems really simple when it comes down to paying off your credit card balances. But if you're doing it in this certain way, it's a violation and they can close down your account.
We're opening our first credit card to spend responsibly. But what about repaying responsibly? Recently, the term credit cycling has taken off on social media following a wave of people sharing stories about their bank accounts being closed. The topic is highlighting a growing lack of financial literacy among credit card users.
Our chief business correspondent with Queen City News, Taylor Young, joining us this morning. And Taylor, first of all, we did basically a poll. Almost no one has heard of what credit cycling is. Explain it. What is this, Taylor?
Yeah, so it's when someone essentially repeatedly maxes out their credit card, then pays it off all in one cycle. So it's like this revolving door of debt. And I think it's better explained with an example, because I think that can get a little bit confusing. So say you open a new credit card and your limit is $5,000. You decide to make a big purchase, spend it all in one place on a new gaming system. Well, you have officially maxed out your credit limit for the month. But, and this is where it gets important, instead of waiting until your next cycle to spend more, you pay off that new gaming system immediately, which then brings your credit limit back up to $5,000, and you continue to make more purchases. So this essentially allows people to spend far beyond their credit limit, and in some cases doubling it. Now, this is a practice that has become a trend among young credit card users, and while very tempting, it does come with a lot of risks.
So essentially what you have is people that will use that credit card. So if you got that $5,000 credit limit, you would max that card out in that payment cycle and immediately pay that off. So if you buy TV or make a huge purchase, you max the card off and then put the cash on it to pay it down. But then that person may max that card out again with another large purchase to max out that credit card line and then pay it off again before the due date. Now, you are not paying interest because you are paying it down before the due date, but it puts a red flag on your account.
And also it can be tempting because this allows you to, again, increase your credit limit. So you're able to make a lot more purchases than what the bank essentially told you that you could in the very beginning.
Now, a lot of people are being taught that on social media as a way to trick the system. Also, that they're putting a lot of spin on that card to get the credit card company to increase their credit line. But this can have the opposite effect with the credit card company actually shutting down that credit line. And if you have a balance on that card, and then this can close the card out, tank your credit score because now you have a balance and you don't have a credit card limit anymore. You just have a debt reporting on your credit report. And many people, once that happened, they're really upset and they don't want to pay the debt back because you just tanked my credit score. Then they don't pay the balance off, and it can lead to a lawsuit.
Okay, so what are the risks associated with? Because I'm with Jason. If you're paying it off here before the monthly billing cycle is over, maybe we're just too old to figure it out. What are the risks here?
I mean, the biggest risk is a bank kind of noticing that you're doing this and then shutting down your account and then taking back all of your rewards, because banks spend billions of dollars on rewards every single year. It's what gets people to open up credit cards, right? They even kind of have competitions over, well, my bank offers better rewards. Well, this artificially kind of inflates the cost a bank would be spending on those rewards. But secondly, and I think this is the one that people should really think about, is that this can also raise alarm bells on the type of behavior that you're doing. So it can look like you're in financial distress. You are borrowing way more than the bank allots you to. And second, it also mimics fraud and money laundering. And that's not something that you want to have on your account either.
And she made some really excellent points. Number one, there's rules against banks with anti-money laundering rules. Actually, TD Bank was hit with a huge fine and penalty because they did not prevent some drug cartels and also some Chinese connected gangs from doing money laundering. So banks now have to monitor certain activities that's going on with their customers. Additionally, maxing out your credit card line is always a red flag. So that's one of the biggest problems that's going on with this card cycling. You're maxing out the credit card line and then paying it off, maxing it out again. That's going to be an internal red flag. So it looks like you're in a financial strain some kind of way.
Okay, can I throw another example out there and see if I'm in the ballpark? I'm trying to wrap my head around this. All right, so let's say you get 2-3% cash back. You maxed out the $5,000 for the month. You pay it back in a week, right? So you got 2% cash back on the $5,000. You've paid it off. I make another $5,000 purchase. I'm getting another 2 or 3% cash back when I was originally only supposed to get it on the 5,000, right? So now I'm getting it on 10,000 within a 30-day cycle. That's where the red flag comes up to these banks going, we only told you could do it on your max amount. You're doubling that amount in a 30-day cycle. That's the issue here. It's not that am I getting into debt? It's I'm sort of taking advantage of the system.
Yes.
That is.
And the concern is not just on rewards. I mean, that's a benefit of this for the people who do it, but it's the behavior that this looks a lot like money laundering.
Wow, this is really interesting. And financial literacy continues to be an issue for not just younger generations, but everyone still.
I mean, considering that a lot of people are doing this and not even realizing. I mean, even just our conversation, it's kind of like, why is this wrong?
Why is it wrong?
So a lot of people are accidentally doing this, which is why it went kind of viral on social media, because people were responding saying, wow, I didn't even know that this was kind of against bank policy. So read your contracts with your bank when you open up a credit card, or you can lose all of your rewards. But I'm kind of looking bigger picture here. There are several studies out there that say that financial literacy is actually declining since 2020. According to the National Financial Literacy Council, 40% of U.S. adults right now could not pass a basic financial literacy test. A big part of why people are kind of losing that financial literacy is because it's not really taught a lot in schools, right? We're not really taught, I wasn't in high school about financial literacy, but a lot more districts and states are starting to incorporate that in their curriculums. Just the South Carolina Board of Education made it a requirement that all high school students had to take a credit card literacy program or class before graduation.
So that's one of the major issues. If you're doing this, it's by maxing out your credit card and then paying it off and turning around and maxing it out again before the due date. So that's what's causing the red flag, because like I said, banks now must watch out for money laundering, and this put a red flag on you. Additionally, it also looks like you're in financial trouble. And so unfortunately, banks don't want to lend you money when you really need it. So they want to ensure that you're in a financial place to pay them back. So many times if they see that, they could possibly close your account out. But many people can do this innocently, especially during the holiday season, because you just don't know that this is a violation against your credit card agreement and contract. So additionally, yes, many of us did not get education on how to use credit cards. They definitely need to put this credit information and teaching in school. You use this more than algebra right now. Your credit score is the main component of your life to get housing, a car, even to get accepted sometimes for a job. So this education need to actually be put in schools, but a lot of it, big business do not want you knowing this information because that will actually stop them from making money off of you. So many people don't learn about this until it's too late and their credit scores are damaged. But with my elite credit systems, users like Greg was able to remove a collection off of his credit report.
Yeah. And the other thing that I noticed is the fact that, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't like max my card out and then pay it all the way down like that. But I, would sometimes make, purchase of maybe, $100, $200. And if I knew, okay, I'm not gonna, you know, let this go beyond the billing cycle and I'm just going to pay it off, but I just want to get like the rewards points. You know what I'm saying? And I would pay my credit card down. Right. And I'm also paying attention to my credit usage, right, on my credit report. So I'm like, okay, again, I want to pay it down because sometimes it can take like 45 to 60 days for them to actually report like they're supposed to. Like sometimes the reporting agencies are trash. That's just my opinion. That's just me. But this is really interesting to me because I'm like, wow, people are trying to build up their credit. And you guys can let me know in the comment section. I think it's weird because you have to use credit in order to do certain things, right? Like she was saying, even to get a job, they're looking at your credit report. So what happens when people are like, I don't want to use credit? Because I have a child like that she refuses. She's like, I don't want a credit card. I don't want to be bothered. I just don't want to. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But what happens when she wants to maybe purchase a house or a car, or anything like that? Like at those junctures, like, buying a card that can help you build credit or, taking out a loan or whatever. But I just find it very interesting because they don't want to teach people financial literacy, but then they want to punish you when you mess up your credit, right? So I'm glad that they're now, finally teaching it in schools, but they do not want people to succeed at having credit. It's like at every point in turn, you would think you'd be able to get just a straight answer about, okay, what's the best thing to do when you have credit? Because when you ask those questions, you're going to get 5 different answers. You just are. You're going to get 5 different answers and you're going to be sitting there like, is it even worth it getting credit? Because credit just seems like a hassle. But at the same time, it's a necessary evil. It literally is like having a car. It is a necessary evil because you're going to be asked at certain points in time for this credit. And so we're going to have to, as a society, go, okay, what's beneficial? What isn't? Now, I know they came after the Consumer Bureau Protection, CFBP, Consumer Bureau Protection, something, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or something like that. Like I said, I'm just trying to get the acronym right. But anyway, it was put in place, I want to say, by Senator, oh gosh, and I could see her face. I can't think of her name. I'll think of her name in a moment. But to any avail, she helped put that legislation in place to help, and it's supposed to help consumers, right? Because Nancy Pelosi had written some other legislation with the consumer protection. It was what consumer protection rights, but all it did was it emboldened credit card companies to further abuse people with their credit. It allowed loopholes for them to, overcharge people for late fees or different things of this nature. So this agency was supposed to be put in place so you could report things that the credit card companies were doing that were bad, but they're all, in my opinion, under the same umbrella. A lot of these consumer, when you have to take like credit card classes or whatever, because I've also had to file bankruptcy in my life, and I've had to take these literacy classes. They're owned by some of the same companies and agencies. It's terrible. So I'm glad, shout out to South Carolina for putting it in your curriculum for your students to have financial literacy. Because, like I said, when it comes to credit, it is such a I'll call it a hot potato, right? In my opinion, they've already stacked it against you and then say that you need it. Like, and that's why I call it a necessary evil. And Uncle Coolwater, thank you so much for joining us this morning and reposting the stream. Now, the next video, um, I've been debating. I was debating while I was watching the video. Like my head's always spinning and turning. I actually want to go over an article that I found out, and you guys have probably already heard about this. If you haven't, then this is why it's Tell It All Tuesday, right? And it is about wage garnishment for student loans, and it's going to start in January, right? And these are 5 things that borrowers ugh, can't even talk still, should know. And this is sad. Um, because yeah, they are going to be starting to garnish people's wages. So student loan borrowers, the government is coming for your paycheck, as initially reported by the Washington Post and other media outlets earlier this week. The education department plans on initiating wage garnishment proceedings against borrowers in default on their federal student loans starting in January. More than 5 million borrowers could be immediately at risk for garnishment, with millions more to follow in the coming months. Okay. The move to garnish borrowers' paychecks is just the latest step the department has taken under the Trump administration to ramp up collection efforts against defaulted federal student loan borrowers. Under federal law, the government has powerful tools to pursue Americans who default on their federal student loans. Now, federal student loans. I'm not sure if this is going to affect people that have personal student loans, because those are 2 different things. If you have personal student loans, completely different. Because I think I saw a video on X where somebody was like, yeah, they're charging like 13% interest on their student loan. To that person, I would definitely recommend and suggest getting a consolidated loan, right? Figure out a consolidation and you know, get out of that, refinance immediately, because that is very crazy. And Uncle Coolwater says you can't get anything or do anything without them wanting to check your credit now. I remember when they first installed credit check to open a bank account. Absolutely. And they still do. They still do have it, but it's a different system. And that's a whole, it's weird. That's like a whole conversation, right? Because it's not like your Experian or Equifax or TransUnion. No, it's a completely separate credit structure when it comes to opening up a bank account. I forget the name of it. It's called checks or something like CHEX or something like that. And you could have stuff on there and not even know it. Like just say you go to try to open a bank account and they're like, oh, we can't because it came up that you had defaulted. And you're like, what are you talking about? I've never defaulted a bank or whatever. And they show you this, and there could be things on there and you would never know. I kid you not. They have a whole separate reporting system when it comes to that in the bank account, and it will not show up on your regular Equifax, TransUnion, or Experian credit profile. Yeah, like if anything needs to be done in our government right now, those systems, those checks and balances, like all of those reporting agencies, they have to be more forthcoming because they don't tell you, and they're not obligated to, still to this day. It's crazy. Anyway, let's get back to these federal student loans. So, without the need for litigation or a court, earlier this year, the Education Department began reporting delinquent and defaulted federal student loans to credit bureaus and started seizing the federal tax refunds for defaulted borrowers. The department had threatened to start offsetting Social Security benefits as well, but subsequently walked that back. It is unclear that if that reprieve is temporary. Here's what borrowers are in default on their federal student loans should know about looming wage garnishment and how to avoid it. Update your contact details to avoid wage garnishment for student loans. So that's one way. It says, with garnishment, you have the right to be sent a notice that explains the Education Department's intention to garnish your wages in 30 days, the nature and amount of your debt, your opportunity to inspect a copy records relating to your debt, your right to object to garnishment, and your option to avoid garnishment by voluntary repayment, says the Department of Education. So some of this may just trigger you to look at the different programs that they have because they do have programs in place. Like, say if you're not your job changed and you had a lull in your income and you weren't be able to pay it, and that happened to a lot of people, especially over the pandemic, and it was paused. Okay, so with that out of the way, go back to the Department of Education, look at your profile, look because they do have programs available and you might not have to pay that much. You might be paying like $100 a month where it was actually asking you to pay $1,000 a month. That's all I'm saying. Just definitely check it out. Um, uh, Cure delinquency for student loans before defaulting, right? Um, Default typically occurs after a borrower is more than 270 days delinquent or past due on their balance. That gives borrowers falling behind on their payments at least 9 months to pull their student loans back from the cliff and avoiding defaulting. According to Education Department data, nearly 3 million borrowers are between 30 and 270 days delinquent on their federal student loans. So there's still time. There's still time. Tatas, good morning to you. And thank you so much for reposting the stream. Let's see. Request a hearing to avoid wage garnishment for defaulted student loans. Apply for administrative discharge of student loans to avoid wage garnishment, right? So there are ways. So one specific basis for requesting a hearing and ultimately objecting to wage garnishment is if the borrower has a legitimate basis for discharging their student loans. You can qualify for administrative discharge if your school lied to you about the program or the loans you were taking out. The school failed to pay you a refund after you withdrew from classes. You are totally or permanently disabled. The loan is not enforceable, for example, because of forgery or other reason, or you are eligible for a closed school discharge. And this is according to the National Consumer Law Center. Okay, so there are ways out of this. Cure defaulted student loans to avoid wage garnishment. Like I was saying, go and apply for some of these programs. I was trying to see. Okay. And so what I also did was I went to Grok and I said, okay, what's going on? can can we help it? It says, so if you're struggling with the student loans, typically after 270 days of non-payment, wage garnishment can take up to 15% of your disposable income without a court order. Now that's disposable income. Okay. This is after so they have to take into account rent, food, gas, if you have childcare expenses, any of those things. And then they can take 15% of what they consider disposable income. So if your disposable income, let's just say is $100, they can take $15 of that $100, leaving you with $85. That's the simplest way I can put it. So I know that, it can stink because the other part about it is your tax refund, they can take that whole thing, the whole thing, because that is, yeah, trust me, my mom went through this. They can take the whole thing. Your best bet is to refinance it. If you have a personal loan, definitely refinance. But if you have a federal loan, go to, the federal website. If you haven't, there you can look it up, and they have ways in there for you to register. It's all free. You register, they'll pull up your name, they'll connect your account, and then you can actually see what you owe, what the breakdown is, what the what is it, the percentage is for the loan. And on top of all that, again, they do have programs that are sliding scale programs that you can be a part of. So if you are in default, you can get back into forbearance, and you want to be in forbearance, not default. Okay. And so there is a way out of this. So I just want to give some people hope out there. Okay. Just giving you hope. You want to go to studentaid.gov. Okay. And they will let you in, or call your servicer, right? If you know who your loan servicer is. And you can request a hearing to challenge the wage garnishment. So just know that can happen. Rehabilitate your defaulted loans, which I was talking about, right? And get them back on track. You can contact your servicer, agree to a 9 on-time voluntary payments over 10 months, due within 20 days each. Payments are income-based, often as low as $5 a month. So if you provide financial info for Perkins loans, it's 9 full payments. Okay. So there is a way out of this. I think garnishment is one of the last steps they should be taking, but there is a way out of this. Consolidate your loans, which was what I was talking about, into a direct consolidation loan. So there is a way to do that. Apply for administrative discharge. We went over that, and they mentioned that in the letter. Settle or pay off in full, right? If you have that ability. So there are different ways to go about getting this done. And again, I just want to encourage everybody out there, if you've got outstanding loans, please, please, please do what you can. Clock's ticking, obviously. The first is in a couple of days, literally 2 days. And so I just want to make sure everybody out there, hey, it's okay. We can get this done, right? Not the end of the world. Now, if you have personal student loans, right, that are not federal, you will definitely want to look into, like I said, consolidation or refinancing. Those are your two best bets about getting that done. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. And Sassy Lady, thank you so much for joining us this morning and reposting the stream. But we're going to take a quick break. And after we return, we'll get into some more of this news on Tell It All Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. With the energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. longevity, at exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation. Take your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And today is Tell It All Tuesday. And so we're going to get into our next video and subject matter. Now, this one's an interesting video. Somebody actually sent me this, and I wanted to find more information about it. And I was like, well, actually, I kind of have some of the information that ties into this video. So let's check this out.
Are linked together with the fraud that we're seeing unfold right now. And I'm going to explain to you how it is. See, it starts way back when Barack Obama was president. When he was president, he was in charge of appointing somebody to the Department of Justice Civil Division. It's Tony West. And you say, well, who's Tony West? It's Kamala Harris's brother-in-law. So he appoints Kamala Harris's brother-in-law, Tony West, but not only does he do that, but he removes the restriction that Congress has to approve any settlement over $100,000. See, Congress used to have to approve that. Once Barack took away that restraint, DOJ can sue for anything with nobody's approval. They could sue for $1 gazillion, and Congress doesn't have to approve for a settlement. Why is the settlement important? Because in a settlement, you don't have to disclose all the law firms involved. You just settle. Now, people complain when Tony West was settling all of these cases. They were all minority-based cases. People suing the Justice Department for minority-based this, minority-based that. The Justice Department, what they would do because of Tony West is settle. 50 million, 40 million, $1 billion, nobody knew because they wouldn't release it because Barack Obama already signed off saying, you don't got to tell nobody. So Kamala Harris's brother-in-law was taking all of this money, giving it to all of these law firms. Now, you know, Barack, he's an attorney. Michelle Obama, she's an attorney. So all of these attorneys out there were getting all of this money from the DOJ now, being fed and loving it. Tony West, another attorney, he's now the head of Uber. That's a whole nother story. We'll talk about that later. He's the head of Uber legal department. But now all of these attorneys are eating right now. Nobody knows how much money is going on. Kind of like with BLM, when people were donating all this money to BLM, but BLM wasn't giving money to the people who it was intended for. That's what these law firms were doing. They were keeping the funds. So people were suing the Justice Department on behalf of minorities. Minorities weren't getting the money, though. The law firms were getting the money. So after they saw how this scheme was working, now you got Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar, Michelle Obama. What was Michelle Obama big for? We got to feed all these kids. This is about nutrition. We got to make sure every kid has a meal. That was Michelle Obama. Ilhan Omar says, oh, we could do that in Minnesota. I'll start a whole new program. So now she's using all of the legalese from Michelle Obama, go to Minnesota. They create this feeding our future. No kid starves. And where did all the money end up? In Kenya, China, Somalia. Who's linked to Kenya? Barack Obama. Kenyan relatives. Who's in China? Tim Walz. He has all these Chinese connections. All the banks in China know who Tim Walz is. He was a big politician. He's got connections over there. They chose Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris linked in with who? The DOJ already. Tony West. He already went to Uber. But guess who's also they're linked in with? Tim Walz in Minnesota through Ilhan Omar. So now you got all of these people who are all linked together, already got previous dealings with each other. The Democrats are like, why don't we run a primary? Barack is like, we're not running a primary. We're going to appoint Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, you're going to choose Tim Walz. Everybody's like, who the hell's Tim Walz? See, Tim Walz has already been deep in it with Ilhan Omar and Michelle Obama's food programs. They've already been deep in scamming already. So they need to choose somebody that can keep it rolling. You can't choose an outside Democrat. You can't choose a Pete Buttigieg or anybody like that, because they're going to be like, what the hell is all this going on? Now, when Trump finally won and he came in and he says, we're cleaning this all up, everybody started resigning. The head of Social Security office resigning. All of these people started resigning because they knew the jig was up. All of this money that they were putting up for minorities and putting up for illegals, it was all just being swindled. Nobody was being taken care of. $9 billion is flowing out of this country. Ukraine was kind of getting money on. It's like, hey, we'll help you guys move the money. As long as, we got our man Zelensky in power, we will help you move the money. Everything was happening right in front of everybody's faces. Now they want to claim, oh, it's not as big as what it is. When Trump won, it disappeared. Like, what happened? Were we investigating this guy or what? He was the one scamming the DOJ. He was using minorities to fund all of these law firms who were in turn giving money to Kamala Harris, an attorney, Michelle Obama, attorney, Barack Obama, attorney, Tony West, attorney. So all of our tax dollars are flowing to all these attorneys. Where's the money at? And once Barack Obama already knew Obamacare was a scam from the get-go, he was like, this is going to be too easy. We've got illegals coming in from Somalia, illegals coming in from all over the world. We can have them apply for and use Medicaid, Medicare, all of these services, creating dummy companies and everything else to make sure we trap the tax dollars in our scheme. We don't let the Americans into the scheme. We do the scheme with the people coming into the country that don't know how our laws work. We're the attorneys here. We just need a bunch of patsies.
Okay. And Soulful, thank you so much for joining us this morning and reposting the stream. My goodness. Now his breakdown, it's like he connected some dots, and I'll definitely be further looking into Tony West. The only thing that I could really bring up was the Minnesota timeline, right? Because people started reporting fraud in 2009. Who was president at that time? It was Barack Obama. He was in office. Early vulnerabilities that were identified, and this was in Minnesota in particular. They have a large Somali community. A state report flags risk in the federal child care assistance program, setting the stage for later exploitation. No major actions taken. Now, this was just for the child care assistance program. And it was a state report. Nothing. Now, this is prior to Tim Walz coming into office. But again, Barack Obama was president at the time. People were sounding the alarm at the time. What's going on, Minnesota? 2009, it's 2025, 16 years. And a baby has exposed this. Yes, I'm calling Nick Shirley a baby. He's 23. I got children older than him biologically. I'm just saying, he's a baby. Okay. And now that the baby has exposed everything, people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we have all this fraud. I'm like, oh my gosh, where have you been? ABC, NBC, CBS, all these other major outlets, people with some money. Okay, I'm not saying the baby ain't got some money. He's got some money, but he ain't got money like ABC money. Where have y'all been? And why weren't you outside exposing all of this? And the other day, somebody actually called one of the phone numbers on the building that spelled learning wrong for a learning center. They forgot the N, right? And when calling that number, it actually rang to the office of Tim Walz, which I found very fascinating. I'm like, why would this be redirected to your office? A center that is supposed to be caring for children. Why would it be ringing back to your office? Like, what would you have to do with this company? But again, now it's a shell company. What if that's a burner phone? with that recording on it. It might not even go back to his, you know what I'm saying? Like at this juncture, the fraud is so high, like arrests need to be made. Period. Like arrests need to happen. Cause this is beyond the pale. Like I've never seen fraud like this in my lifetime. You know, look, fraud is happening everywhere. It's not just happening in Minnesota. I'm not saying that Minnesota's like, oh my gosh, everything's happening there. No, fraud's happening everywhere. But it's the scale of the fraud happening, right? And it's the lack of care being given to stopping the fraud. Because there are whistleblowers that have come forth that have said, we were blew off. They just are not taking this seriously. Like I said, 2009, they were like, hey, we got a whole report here. And there were no major actions taken. And what do we see? We see child care assistance programs, housing assistance programs. Let's see, they've got the transportation assistance programs. They brought in the autism programs. Oh, and the other one, the housing programs as well, with the transitional housing for people who had been arrested in some of those facilities, right? Turning them, quote unquote, they're like facilities, and they're empty. So no one's even living in some of these homes, but they're getting federal dollars for them. And see, that's the part. They're using the federal dollars at the state level. And so the state is almost like thinking, well, we don't have to say anything because you can't tell the state what to do. No, but you took federal money to put those programs in place. And that's the tie. Now, if it was just your state dollars, as a resident of your state, I don't live in Minnesota, I'd be pretty upset, right? But the federal government couldn't tell you what to do with your money. Saying, but that's not the case. You're taking federal dollars. Federal dollars. Now, I will be doing a little bit more of a deep dive on Tony West separately from this program because we only have so much time. But I definitely want to look into Tony West and some of the things that he was talking about in that video, because it's like, wow, if he was able to do that with his DOJ and they were able to say, okay, well, we're just going to take away the restrictions and you just get this done. If Donald Trump were to do something like that, oh my gosh, people would lose their lunch. But nobody talked about this under Obama. Nobody talked about this under Biden. So I'm glad that gentleman brought this up again. We'll be going over that on a separate show. And Sincerely Lawless, thank you so much for joining us this morning and posting the stream. And good morning to you as well. And so now we're going to get into our next video for Tell It All Tuesday. Now, this is a little bit different. And I thought it was very interesting.
Have never even allowed themselves to imagine if America ever had a Black Truth and Reconciliation Commission, like a real one with teeth, this country would not come out the same on the other side, like at all. And once you understand what it would actually require, you start to see why we never had one. A Black TRC wouldn't start with speeches, it would start with evidence. And I'm talking the things they kept buried for decades. Plantation ledgers showing forced breeding, banks redlining maps, university records of enslaved labor, medical files from forced sterilization, police logs from broken investigation, FBI files on everyday Black organizers, corporate profit sheets built on prison labor, federal memos that literally mapped out discrimination. And before anybody talks about healing, we'd finally get the truth. On record. In broad daylight. America loves amnesia. A TRC doesn't let you forget. And now this is where South Africa comes up, because we know they had their TRC. Because South Africa did try something that most countries never attempt. They put apartheid on the record. They forced public testimony. They made the violence undeniable. That took courage and it mattered. But here's the part that people don't like to talk about. A lot of perpetrators confessed. A lot of people cried. A lot of people went home afterwards. Very few lost wealth. Very few lost land. Very few lost political power. So what South Africa showed us is this. Truth without consequence doesn't dismantle systems. It documents them. And that's not a failure of the people who testified. That's a failure of accountability. Now, in a Black TRC, nobody's dragging random neighbors to microphones. We're talking institutions being forced to say the quiet part on camera. Police departments, school boards, state governments, banks, hospitals, universities, intelligence agencies, corporations. Every single one would have to answer one question. Well, I guess two, really. How did you harm Black people? Where are the receipts? And they wouldn't be allowed to dodge it. Imagine the elders, the people who lived through Jim Crow and sundown towns, even though I know they still exist. Redlining, housing discrimination, medical abuse, COINTELPRO. Finally, sitting down and saying, this is what happened to us. This is what they did to our family. This is what they took. This is what we survived. And nobody interrupts them. Nobody demands proof. Nobody calls it the past. The testimony itself becomes the archive. You can't gaslight a nation when the whole country is listening. And if the truth is on the table, the solutions have to be real too. Reparations wouldn't look like, here's a one-time check. They would look like returning stolen land, eliminating debt caused by discriminatory lending, restoring generational wealth that was blocked, rebuilding intentionally underfunded schools, investing in Black maternal health, redirecting public money into Black communities, dismantling policies that were built to cage or control us. A Black TRC wouldn't ask what's fair. It would ask what was taken and then calculate from there. And here's the part nobody's ready for. After a real Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Black Americans, this country will never again be able to say we didn't know. It wasn't that bad. It was a long time ago. Not all institutions were involved because everything would be on record. The truth would finally outrank the myth. And once the truth is public, America doesn't get to hide behind innocence anymore. So yeah, if this country ever held a Black Truth and Reconciliation Commission, like a real one, it wouldn't just be about looking back. It would force this nation to admit what it did, what it built, what it stole, and who paid the price. It would change how we understood the past and what we tolerate in the present and what we demand going forward. And honestly, that's exactly why we've never had one. Because the moment Black truth becomes official record, America has to stop pretending. And that would change everything. Now imagine if we actually got that. What questions would you ask? What would you want to see? Let me know in the comments.
Yeah, that would be something. So let me know what you guys think, because I think a lot of healing would actually occur. Just to have just to really lay it all out, right? Because I know we're doing it in parts, but to have a commission to actually put it forward similarly to the way they did in South Africa, that would be good. Yeah, Sassy Lady says pretending and turning a blind eye. That's what's been happening. That's what's been happening. Yeah. And that's what we no longer want. And so these next videos, these are from Prometheus. And this is a Promethean. And it's a channel on TikTok. And I found like 3 different short videos, talking about just the recent meeting at Mar-a-Lago and some of the plans that those meetings may have deterred. And also Rubio and how he banned some people from Britain coming over. So let's start.
Sunday that he is now convening 2 working groups of Americans, Ukrainians, and Russians for urgent discussions. One group will finalize security guarantees for both Ukraine and Russia coming out of this awful war. The other will focus on economic reconstruction of Ukraine. Both Ukraine and Russia have agreed to participate in the 2 working groups. He rejected outright the Ukrainian and European demand for a ceasefire as the precondition for settling the war, and moved straight to the issue of how do we create a permanent peace. Now, Trump and Putin met in Alaska back in August. They discussed how to engineer a permanent peace in Europe and joint great economic development projects in the Arctic and elsewhere. Those discussions led to the 28-point Ukraine peace plan the Trump administration presented back in November. Both events set the warmongers in Europe, led by the UK, Brussels, Germany, and France, into frantic provocations to continue the war. They are dependent on creating war hysteria in order to keep their rebelling populations in check. They tried to steal Russia's central bank funds frozen in Europe since the present conflict began in February of 2022. They wanted to use these funds to continue to fund the war, but Hungary, Slovakia, and Belgium blocked the robbery. Instead, they loaned Ukraine billions with no demand for repayment. NATO's head and representative of the Dutch oligarchy, Mark Rutte, openly declared that Europe must now prepare for war with Russia. It was his attempt to provoke war hysteria.
We need to be ready, because at the end of this first quarter of the 21st century, conflicts are no longer fought at arm's length. Conflict is at our door. Russia has brought war back to Europe, and we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured. Imagine it, a conflict reaching every home, every workplace. Destruction, mass mobilization, millions displaced, widespread suffering, and extreme losses.
They also demanded that the United States put boots on the ground to defend Ukraine against Russia, a red line for Moscow and for Trump. They insisted that Ukraine's NATO membership was still an open matter. They further insisted that ceding the already Russian-won territories in eastern Ukraine's Donbass region violated Ukraine's sovereignty. But those historically Russian territories in the Donbass have been in a civil war with Kiev since the 2014 coup. They were granted self-government by the Minsk agreements. An imminent Ukrainian full-scale attack on the Donbass provoked the current war. Now the Donbass is more than 95% Russian occupied, and the people there have voted to join the Russian Federation. And Ukraine's sovereignty, well, they gave that up when they agreed to become a pawn in the Anglo-American plan for war with Russia, which began in 2014. Here's President Trump on the Donbass issue yesterday.
In your mind, sir, what are the thorniest issues still unresolved after the?
Well, I think the land you're talking about. Some of that land has been taken. Some of that land is maybe up for grabs, but it may be taken over the next period of a number of months. And are you better off making a deal now?
Now, showing true colors, Zelensky has been feted 3 times this year by King Charles, and King Charles's Christmas address featured a Ukrainian chorus to underline total British imperial resistance to settling the war. And Zelensky's final meeting before going to Mar-a-Lago? Well, that was with the central bankers of central bankers, Mark Carney in Canada. There he secured $1.8 billion in direct payments to Ukraine and about $6.8 billion in loan guarantees. Carney praised Zelensky's leadership and called Russia barbaric.
Okay. Now on to the next one.
Held court at Mar-a-Lago Sunday, starting the day with an hour-and-a-half telephone call with President Putin. He welcomed Ukraine's President Zelensky to Mar-a-Lago. Then, with the utmost charm, President Trump rejected every single one of the European planks in their new peace plan, which is really a plan for more war. He also showed why Marjorie Taylor Greene's claim that peace is not America first shows that she has gone over to the dark side. Trump is jumpstarting our dead economy through trade. He's reclaiming our sovereignty from a globalist tyranny, which has lasted over 80 years. Here is Trump handling the hostile press yesterday with a generous offer of a Mar-a-Lago lunch. It was typical of the entire event.
Are you okay? Is everyone fine? Margot, if you would, I think you could sit outside and have some food. Would you like to have some food, or do you consider that a bribe? And therefore you cannot write honestly, or therefore you have to write a bad story. Okay, because if you'd like, would you like something to eat at this time? Yes or no? You can speak.
Yes, sir.
Yes? Okay. Margot, take them outside, tell the chef, serve them a little lunch, okay?
I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've followed the Ukraine war against Russia ever since it started back in 2014. That's when we joined the British in a coup d'etat regime change operation there. The crazy idea was to fully arm Ukraine, which sits on Russia's border, for a hybrid war to bleed Russia to death. Today, I'm going to first talk about the significance of the Mar-a-Lago talks on Sunday and everything the Europeans and Zelensky did to try to sabotage Trump. They failed. Then I'm going to show you how Trump is answering those, like new media darling Marjorie Taylor Greene, when they rave that peace and economic development aren't America first or economically profitable for the American people. Finally, I'm going to share some new information for you to consider in the case of Jeffrey Epstein. I now think it's very likely that he was working for George H.W. Bush in a secret, dirty operation the vice president ran out of the Reagan White House. But before we dig in, please like and share this video. It increases our reach on YouTube.
Okay. Now, that was just like her intro to things that she was going to cover. So I will definitely link that video. So if you want to further watch what she gets into, definitely do that. Now, I also wanted to get this video in from Promethean. It's still under their channel.
Looks like when the British Empire loses control. Secretary of State Marco Rubio just dropped the hammer on the British censorship apparatus. Rubio just banned 5 British and European agents who have been trying to silence Americans and interfere in U.S. elections. Here's what he said. Today, the State Department will take steps to bar leading figures of the global censorship industrial complex from entering the United States. We stand ready and willing to expand this list if others do not reverse course. Now, one of those newly barred British figures played a key role on the ground in the United States in 2024, trying to stop Donald Trump from getting elected. But now it's all out in the open, just like the recent national security strategy put the split with Europe more broadly out in the open. In other words, the United States is saying, your current policies of censorship, open borders, and keeping the war in Ukraine going are not our policies. So, in London back rooms, the British are quietly conceding that Donald Trump has the upper hand for the moment, and they're preparing Plan B. If they can't stop him, they want to try and outlast him. And they're turning to none other than Mike Pence for that. So we'll break down the new long game coming out of London, specifically from the Empire's premier think tank, Chatham House. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've tracked the hidden hand of the British Empire in the United States for decades. I've seen how they've shaped our economic and strategic policies and manipulated our political processes. Donald Trump has forced that out in the open like no one in my lifetime. And now we have a chance to act like a true republic again. So please like, share, and subscribe so we can spread this message. Today, I'm going to look at how the British and Europe are sabotaging peace in Ukraine in order to buy time, how they're building a Trojan horse inside the Republican Party to undermine Trump in the 2026 midterms, and how Trump's revolutionary economic strategy can completely outflank them. So, to understand why the British are desperately looking for Plan B, you have to understand what they just lost here in Washington. Look at one of the figures that Marco Rubio just banned, Imran Ahmed. He's the British CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate. Now, for months prior to the 2024 elections, Ahmed and the CCDH were on the ground in the United States as part of the British deployment to stop Donald Trump. They were part of an army of British foot soldiers, which included nearly 100 British Labour Party staffers interfering directly in our elections. Rubio has just called the censorship industrial complex out, and that weapon is being neutralized. And because they can no longer quietly manipulate American politics from the inside, they're trying to trap us from the outside. This brings us to Ukraine. The split between the United States and Europe and Britain has never been wider. Trump's new national security strategy makes it official. Europe is the problem, not only when it comes to censorship, but when it comes to the Ukraine war. So while Trump's team, led by Steve Witkoff, was meeting separately with Russian and Ukrainian delegations in Florida this past weekend, trying to move the peace process forward, the Europeans were locking themselves into perpetual war with Russia. At a European Council meeting, the EU granted a massive new loan to Ukraine, but the terms are a trap. Hungarian Prime Minister Orban, a Trump ally who opposes the European war stance, pointed out that repayment isn't tied to Ukraine's economic recovery. It's tied to military victory. Here's what Orban said. For this money to ever be recovered, Russia would have to be defeated. That is not the logic of peace, but the logic of war. A war loan inevitably makes its financiers interested in continuation and escalation of the conflict. So the EU and British financiers have just incentivized themselves to sabotage any peace deal Trump proposes. They need the war to continue to save their investment. But they really are doing this alone. Donald Trump is not playing that game, and the Russians know it. And President Putin is openly mocking the disconnect between London and Washington. In his annual year-end marathon Q&A, President Putin responded to the war rhetoric from NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte by pointing out that Europe is completely out of step with the Trump administration. Here's what Putin said. I just want to ask him, what are you saying about a war with Russia? Can you even read? Just read the new U.S. national security strategy. It says that the United States is the key player in NATO, and yet the new national security strategy does not list Russia as an enemy or a target. How can NATO aim to go to war with Russia if the alliance's leading power does not regard us as an adversary? That's the reality. The British and the Europeans are pushing for war, while the U.S. national security strategy has pivoted away. They're isolated, they're desperate, and they need a new way to gain leverage over Trump. And that's why they've turned their eyes to the 2026 midterms. This is going to be a critical point in the entire Trump revolution. And this is why you should subscribe to Promethean Action. We're playing a leading role in equipping you with the intelligence, the resources, and the strategy we're all going to need to win this battle. So please head on over to our website and subscribe to our free newsletter. So here's what you need to understand. The British establishment realizes that the new national security strategy and the other actions by the State Department is a declaration of war against their rules-based order and their policies, and that Donald Trump, if unchecked, is not going to be stopped from establishing an American, not a globalist foreign policy. So they're out to checkmate him with the loss of Congress in the 2026 midterms. And Chatham House, which has been the central mouthpiece for modern British imperialism, is saying it with remarkable candor. They had a year-end policy review seminar, and here's what their director of global economy, Creon Butler, said.
To the extent that in 2026 we have less uncertainty, maybe because Trump loses some steam as a result of midterm elections, because he doesn't want to have any more economic damage to US Supreme Court decisions, we'll see. Or just because, he just runs out of steam and therefore we have that greater stability. We will, see a stabilization in the economies and growth will it is going, but it may strengthen further.
Butler is not a minor figure. He's worked for the Bank of England and the Foreign Office under both Labour and Conservative governments. He's the perfect empire man. Think about what's said. Their economic control depends on Trump losing steam in the 2026 midterms. They're not predicting it, they're planning for it. And they aren't hiding it either. Chatham House just published an interview with a top Democratic strategist with this telling headline. If the Democrats can't take back the U.S. Senate in the midterm elections, we're in trouble. Trouble for who? For the globalist establishment that Trump is dismantling. Because if Trump maintains Republican control of Congress, or better yet, increases the MAGA component of Congress, he can finish the economic and foreign policy revolution he started. But if the British establishment and the globalists can flip the Senate, or even just pick up enough seats to empower the rhinos, they can paralyze his agenda for the final 2 years of his term. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. They aren't just writing and talking about it. They're deploying their own man inside the Republican ranks, Mike Pence. Pence was in Britain in mid-November getting tuned up for the job, which he laid out in a speech to Chatham House. Pence positioned himself as the anti-Trump on all fronts. He lined up with Europe on Ukraine, he portrayed China as a mortal enemy, and he extolled Britain's role in creating Christian Zionism. Then he summed it up.
The American people are rejecting the siren song of populism. And I believe they always will. Because America's core character does not change. With one leader, one season in our history, our nation has weathered populists and progressives, isolationists and realists, every shade in between.
Not only that, Pence's organization, Advancing American Freedom, is positioning itself as the future of conservatism, one that rejects Trump's economic nationalism and his challenge to forever wars. Just this week, a large group of staffers from the Heritage Foundation defected over to Pence's think tank. Now, in their coverage of that Heritage defection, the Wall Street Journal laid out the reason. Heritage is supporting too many of Trump's policies. And the article quoted Pence attacking Heritage on exactly those grounds. Pence said the foundation had fallen because it had embraced elements of isolationism, stopped backing Ukraine in the war with Russia, supported some tariffs, and backed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as HHS secretary, among other things. So this is the Trojan horse. While Trump is fighting Democrats and the obvious enemies, there's a quiet effort underway to rebuild the Never Trump faction of the Republican Party with British institutional backing and position it to take back control in 2026 or 2028. They can't beat Trump directly, so they're playing the long game. Sabotage peace in Ukraine, target the 2026 midterms to break Trump's momentum, and rebuild a respectable Republican alternative for when Trump is out in 2028. But here's what they don't count on. Trump isn't playing by their rules: political, strategic, and especially economic. His economic policies can make them irrelevant through his sheer economic success and by creating a new Republican coalition, which doesn't need the likes of Mike Pence and his fellow travelers and is based on blue-collar workers and a broad coalition of everyday Americans. Trump is building a new American system economy, and if he succeeds, especially if the working class sees real growth, if factories start getting built as they are, if blue-collar Americans can raise a family on one income, then the Pence Chatham House faction is going to fall on its face and is going to be left in the dust. So look at the economic news this week. In two key areas, the experts were caught flat-footed by Trump's success. Under the headline, "Inflation Cools Faster Than Expected," this article says, the financial markets received a long-awaited gift this morning as the November Consumer Price Index report revealed inflation is easing at a significantly faster pace than Wall Street had anticipated. And then there were the GDP figures, which Trump celebrated with this truth. Third quarter GDP came in at 4.3%, blowing past expectations of 3.2%. 60 of 61 Bloomberg economists got it wrong, but Trump and some other geniuses got it right. The success is due to good government and tariffs. And Trump is delivering. Look at what he's doing on multiple fronts. While he's pursuing policies which will build up the working class with more good-paying jobs, he's taking on the problem from the top. He's taking aim at the super concentrated industries, the various industrial complexes like health, drug, and beef cartels that we spoke about last week. And in his White House Oval Office availability on Monday, Trump added to the list of cartels he's taking on and announced that he's going to be meeting with auto insurance, home insurance, and other insurance companies next week because they are, quote, making far more than they're entitled to make, unquote. And here's the big one, the military-industrial complex. In announcing a major initiative to build battleships again, Trump said this about the defense industry and defense executives.
We'll be discussing the pay to executives where they're making $45 and $50 million a year and not being able to build quickly. They're going to make that kind of money. They have to build quickly. Again, we make the best equipment in the world, but they don't make them fast enough. And we're going to be also discussing dividends. We want the dividends to go into the creation of production facilities. So we'll be talking about all CapEx, dividends, and the pay. We're also going to be talking about buybacks. They spend so much money on buybacks. They want to buy back their stock. I don't want them to buy back their stock. I want them to put the money in plant and equipment so they can build these planes fast, rapidly, like immediately.
So he's telling the military-industrial complex, stop enriching yourself, start building America's defense industrial base. He's telling the insurance companies, stop price gouging, start serving the American people. This is the American system. It's the system that says the government should support productive investment, protect domestic industry, and ensure that the economy serves the people, not the financiers and the cartels. And here's the checkmate move. If Trump's economy booms, if wages rise, if more factories are built, if working class Americans start seeing real prosperity, then what does the Chatham House 2026 strategy matter? So let's wrap this up. The British are playing the long game, but Trump is playing a deeper game. They're targeting 2026. He's building an economic system that makes their entire strategy obsolete. Yes, we need to track the empire's operations, foreign and domestic. But most importantly, we need to support Trump's economic revolution. That's the real battle. So if you want to enlist in that battle, join us at Promethean Action. We're building a community of people who understand grand strategy, who can see through the smoke, and who are committed to joining with Trump in reviving that American system. So please join us as a regular paying member or make the biggest contribution you can. The British think they can outlast Trump, but they're wrong. They can't outlast us, not when we remember who we are and what our republic was designed to be. This has been your Christmas Eve midweek update. I hope you take the time to reflect on what the celebration of Christ's birth means for our republic and for the world, and have a blessed holiday.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, so Promethean is definitely something to excuse me. I'm still trying to get over this cold, you guys. Over the worst part of it, I think, just kind of the cough, a little bit of congestion, but not horrible. Ugh, I hate being sick. Even though it happens once a year. But yeah, definitely I will make sure to attach all the links to all those videos that I showed. And so the next area that I wanted to tap into was this article that I came across in reference to Somaliland. Now, I know that I hadn't really heard about this, and it's not Somalia, it is Somaliland. Okay. And so Israel has formally recognized the Republic of Somaliland as Africa's 55th independent and sovereign state, marking the most significant diplomatic breakthrough for the Horn of Africa territory since it declared independence from Somalia in 1991. So when all of those things kind of occurred in 1990, I want to say under Bush Sr. Was it Bush Sr. or Bush Jr.? Okay. Let me fast forward because it was W. I know. Shouldn't call him W. And then it was Obama and then it was Trump. Okay. So it was more than likely this was, yeah, in the 90s. So this was before Clinton, right? Yeah, because Clinton was nominated in 92. Yeah, so 91, this would have been Bush Sr. Yeah. So remember They did the whole refugee thing with Somalia in 1990. So that wasn't just under Obama, because I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, Obama did the Somali thing. It's like, no, it was done under Bush Sr. And then it just went through the Clinton administration. It went through W. Bush Jr., then through Barack Obama. Yeah, so it lingered, and they're still here. But Somaliland separated themselves. Yeah, very. I find this one really, really interesting, and this let's see, this was for as of the 27th. So this was dropped on Saturday. So the announcement was made by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, confirmed that Israel, together with Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar of Somaliland's president, signed a joint declaration of mutual recognition in the spirit of the Abraham Accords, championed by U.S. President Donald Trump. So Donald Trump approves of what is going on. And so I just try to get a little bit more of a breakdown of Grok. And so for the key details, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar, they signed a joint declaration establishing full diplomatic relations. This includes plans for embassy openings, ambassador changes, cooperation in agricultural, health, technology, and economy. The move frames itself in the spirit of the Abraham Accords, with Somaliland expressing interest in joining them. So, significance for Somaliland. Somaliland has functioned as a de facto independent state for over 3 decades, maintaining its own government, currency, elections, and relative stability compared to Somalia's ongoing conflicts. However, lacking international recognition limited its access to global markets, finance, and formal security partnerships. Israel's recognition improves a major breakthrough, potentially paving the way for others to follow. Speculation around the U.S. or UAE interest and boosting Somaliland's legitimacy and economic prospects. So, geopolitical importance: Somaliland's location on the Gulf of Aden, overlooking Bab el Mandeb Strait, a critical checkpoint for global trade and Red Sea shipping, holds immense strategic value. For Israel, this could enhance maritime security, counter Iranian influence and Houthi threats in Yemen, and expand its African alliances amid efforts to normalize ties with Muslim majority nations. It's a very interesting play. So, regional backlash. The recognition has drawn sharp condemnation from Somalia, calling it an attack on sovereignty and naked invasion. The African Union affirming Somaliland as part of Somalia and warning of precedents for continual stability. Arab League, countries like Egypt, Turkey, Djibouti, and others in the Middle East and Africa, they view it as violating international law and Somalia's territorial integrity. Yeah, they're mad. They're mad. They don't like it. They don't like it. They're like, what is going on? How dare you? Yeah. So, clarification on the article's claim regarding the linked article headline about Africa welcoming its 55th state. This is inaccurate and overstated. The African Union, with 55 members, including Somalia, but not Somaliland, firmly rejects the recognition and upholds Somalia's unity. No continental body or widespread African consensus supports Somaliland's immediate statehood based on this bilateral move. overall, while symbolically huge for Somaliland and strategically beneficial for Israel, the union remains highly controversial and unlikely to immediately reshape African statehood without broader international support. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all falls out in essence, because, Somalia, look, we already know it's interesting up in there. But Somaliland, they're like, we're trying to separate ourselves and be our own entity. So it's gonna be it's gonna be fascinating to see how that conflict kind of pairs itself out. Now, the last video that I wanted to check out with you guys, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but it's from End Time Headlines, and they're talking about UBI, which is Universal Basic Income, and they're actually trying it out in a territory. And so I wanted to just check out some of the video.
Marshall Islands is launching the world's first national universal basic income program. We told you it was coming. The elites have warned us. Elon Musk has been talking about this, and other technocrats as well. Well, Marshall Islands is now the testing grounds for this. According to a new report, they're launching the world's first national universal basic income program. Listen to this, that incorporates cryptocurrency, which is a digital payment option for every citizen. In this quick podcast, we're going to give you why this is important to pay attention to. Let's go. Like button, that would be very beneficial to us. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well. Hit that push notification. We do have a free app. It's available on Apple and Android device. Nation. The Marshall Islands has introduced a national universal basic income, or a UBI. This is a scheme that offers payments via cryptocurrency, that's digital currency, by the way, alongside more traditional methods, which experts say is the, quote, first scheme of its kind in the world. Listen to this. Under this program, every resident citizen of the Marshall Islands will receive quarterly payments of roughly $200 as part of a government effort to ease the cost of living pressures. The first installments were paid in late November, and recipients can choose whether the money is paid into a bank account by check or delivered as cryptocurrency on the blockchain through a government-backed digital wallet. Wow. All right, quote, we, the government, want to make sure no one is left behind. This is according to Marshall Islands Minister for Finance, David Paul, who told The Guardian. $200 per person per quarter, which is about $800 a year, does not compel you to quit your job, but it is actually like a morale booster for people. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not just some welfare reform. This is a glimpse. This is a preview on how governments will eventually link citizens' identities, their digital wallets, and their ability to buy or sell in a global digital economic system. Let me say that one more time real quick. That's a lot. That's a mouthful to say right there. This is not just some kind of a welfare reform to better off the citizens. This is literally a glimpse into how the governments of the world are going to eventually, now we say eventually, we're talking prophetically speaking, out into Revelation, into the tribulation, Revelation 13. Eventually, governments will link, connect, intertwine citizens' identities, their digital wallets, because that's where it's all going, and their ability to buy or sell in a global digital economic system. Now, as of right now, the citizens of Marshall Island have the option to receive this money not just by a bank deposit or a check, but they can receive it via a government-backed digital wallet that operates on a blockchain. This digital wallet is capable of delivering a stable coin cryptocurrency tied to the US dollar directly to people's phones. There you go. Now, some people may look at this and say, well, this is just a small country that's trying to test this. Why? How's this relevant to us? Guys, don't be fooled by this. This move is a precedent that is being set, and here's why. Number one, Most nations are already in the talks regarding a digital wallet and digital currency. This tiny nation that we're talking about today is already implementing one nationally that is tied to a digital identity and payment system. Number two, the Marshall Islands isn't using Bitcoin or some random coin. They're using a stable coin tied to the US dollar. This is delivered on a blockchain network. This is literally real world digital economic layers used for everyday payments. Number three, digital wallets can expand access, but they can also make transactions traceable. Every payment, every transfer happens on an electronic ledger. Now, I want you to think about that, because what have we been saying here? That what do they want? What is their pipe dream? They want a completely digitalized economic system. This is why they want to do away with paper currency, ladies and gentlemen, because when you have a digital currency set up, then everything is traceable. They can track your every transaction that you make. Now keep that in mind. Keep that in the back of your mind. And then you go read, what do we read about in Revelation 13? All right, Revelation, again, 13:16 says that he, the false prophet, causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark in, again, King James says in, New King James says on their right hand, or in or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So here we see a time out in the future where you're going to have a society is the only way they're going to have the ability to buy, sell, or trade is that they're going to have to take something in or on their right hand or in or on their forehead, and this will be completely traceable, and this will be completely monitored by the Antichrist, who will be in power, and the false prophet who will institutionalize this system. So the Antichrist is calling the shots, and the false prophet is basically the right-hand man that's carrying out this agenda. And here you have the Marshall Islands. This is so interesting to me, where the people must use a government-issued digital wallet. The governments know who's in the system. They're going to be able to, they're going to see all this. It's going to be in this data system, in the data bank, and the cloud. Everything is going to be right there. They'll know how much they receive, where it goes. This right here is a digital identity meeting digital economy. Right there in front of your eyes, guys. This is what this is. Right now, the crypto payment is optional. Again, we want to highlight that. But once people begin to rely on this for basic needs, especially, listen to this, if jobs are automated or replaced, remember all the grim warnings they've been giving us about AI. And by the way, that's the whole premise of why they've been talking about a universal basic income, is because people like Elon Musk is saying that AI will eventually take over all the jobs. And then this will be the way that people will be able to continue in life and society. So watch this. If jobs are automated or replaced, what will stop a future system from requiring digital ID, digital payments, and the mixture of these for all economic participation? Nothing. In fact, if anything, it's going to help springboard it into place. And think about this, in a fully traceable digital economy, every purchase and sale is logged and accounted for. On a blockchain, it cannot be erased. This is exactly the type of infrastructure where commerce is tied to an identity ledger that literally, guys, sets the stage and the platform for prophetic descriptions of a system that is coming in Revelation 13, where no one can buy, sell, or trade without the mark of this identity of the Antichrist and the false prophet. Now, let me close with this real quick. Told you it's going to be a short one today. Here's what to watch for. Number one, other nations begin to get on board with this, and they begin to experiment with digital currencies and wallets. If what they're doing in the Marshall Islands is successful, expect bigger countries to follow suit with more integrated digital systems. All right, watch for it. Number two, the integration of digital ID systems. As wallets become more common, linking them to identity systems is obviously the logical next step. All right? And then finally, what's going to happen? You're going to have welfare, payroll, taxes, and commerce. All of this will be on digital rails. Not just a basic income, but all of this other information, your healthcare records. And guys, in case you've been in a rock somewhere, that's literally what they're working on right now. So what are we talking about? We're talking about what Jesus said in Luke 21:28. He said, when you begin to see all of these things coming to pass, look up and lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing near. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for...
Yes. And so, Sassy Lady said, could it be possible the end time system is being set up? Absolutely. And and this is just my opinion, tinfoil hat moment. When we went through the pandemic in 2020, that was a lot of them shifting to ensure that the system was set up. Because remember, a lot of us were at home. They were setting up towers to 5G, right? They were realigning systems and structures to be put in place. Since that time, we've had more digital wallets, let's see, Bitcoin went up to over 100,000, then it crashed again, and it goes back and forth, it is what it is. But since that time, even in July, we had the Genius Act that was passed. And the one part of the big, beautiful bill that was stripped, right, has now been realigned again. So we might see a central bank digital currency under the Trump administration. Again, right now with this Marshall Island, there is a testing ground to see how people will accept it, use it, and they will use that as a framework to disseminate that everywhere else. Yeah, so it's definitely being set up, and they're not shy about putting it out there, right? Never, ever shy. And I want to get this story in really quick, or this article. This actually happened a few days ago. Actually, on, was it Sunday? Was it 28th? Yeah, because yesterday was the 29th, y'all. Sorry. Not well. But unfortunately, there were gunshots fired. 5 juveniles were detained in Atlantic Station. Now, if you live in the Georgia area, Atlantic Station it's like a shopping area. It's really beautiful, but it's a live, work, play. So people live there, some people work there, and the play part is you can go shopping and there's different activities that are there. The one thing that was very concerning is that there were estimated up to 500 teens that were involved in this disturbance. Could you imagine? You're just out hanging out with your family and friends, and then 500, not 100, not 50, 500 teenagers are being disruptive all at once. Yeah. And they weren't really able to control it. Now, officials say gunshots were fired after a group of unruly teens launched fireworks at Atlantic Station. So they were, lighting up fireworks, shooting them off into crowds of people. Yeah, I'm surprised there weren't more injuries for some of that happening. It's extremely dangerous. And it kind of reminded me of what was happening in Chicago when they would have Chicago, and I want to say in DC as well. I forget the formal name of it, but they have these weird things where teens will show up and they're just unruly all at the same time, scattering police everywhere and just doing nonsensical things. I'm like, what is going on? And so I said, can you give me a percentage number breakdown American cities that are predominantly Democrat? Because this is what happens. And this was, something else I was listening to. I'm just trying to wrap this up and get this in the show today. Um, they blame predominantly Democratic cities on situations like this. Now, I mentioned Atlanta, and it is a democratically, predominantly run city. Chicago, same thing. It's a democratic city. Washington D.C., same thing. Democratic city. What is it that they unfortunately have in common? And so the phenomenon of predominantly Democratic cities existing within Republican leaning red states, because that is a thing true, it's referred to as blue islands and red seas, and it's well documented. Okay, and this occurs even when those states have majority Republican leadership, such as governors, legislatures, or consistent Republican voting in federal elections, right? Presidential races. To quantify this based on available data. Now, I live in Georgia, and it is at the upper levels, at the state level, right? We have a Republican governor, Republican lieutenant governor, the House and Senate for the state are Republican, but the majority of the cities within Georgia are democratically led and run. I live in Henry County, and the city of McDonough, Stockbridge, Hampton, they're predominantly Democrats. And I've seen some of their policies, and unfortunately, and I'm really looking forward to moving. Just seen in Stockbridge and McDonough, they're going to turn it into Decatur. It's going to be overrun with apartment buildings, and it's not a quaint town anymore. It's just going to be an overrun, overpopulated city. They will destroy it and run it into the ground. And I see it happening, and it's gross. I'm really hoping that they get better leadership in. I'm hoping that Jalen Williams, he's going to be able to do a lot to just hold the line as the mayor within Stockbridge to make sure that it does not just become this burdensome apartment led city where we're going to see more home ownership, right, within the city. That's what I'm really hoping to see. But it's predominantly Democrat cities and defined by having a Democratic affiliate, mayor, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So statistics, and this is what I wanted to get to. So out of the 100 largest cities, 61 are located in Republican leaning states. Of those 61, 47, which is 77%, have Democratic mayors. Because a lot of times people get upset and they're like, well, why is the state doing this and that? You want to blame it on Republican leadership. Don't. It's Democratic leadership. A lot of this stuff is happening at the local level. It's Democrat in some instances. Now, for context, overall in the top 100 cities, 66 have Democratic mayors, 23 have Republican mayors. The remaining 11 are independent or nonpartisan. And this is of the top 100 cities. So that's just a breakdown. So that could be anywhere all over the country, right? So I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, no. Republicans aren't really running things at the local level, like I've been saying for a long time. Democrats are really steering the ship at the local level. And in particular, a lot of them, they go along with the UN agenda. They're okay with replacement migration. They're okay with a lot of these dystopian policies. They're okay with sanctuary cities. This is why we see a lot of what we're seeing, even if the leadership at the top of the state is Republican. See, the thing, it's like, your states are like little countries, if you look at it that way. And your governors, they're your president, right? And then you've got your state leadership, right? Your House and Senate, which is great. But when you get down to the mayoral part of it, the state leadership can't tell that mayor what to do. That mayor actually has rights to run their city the way they want to run their city. The only thing they can't do is like violate people's rights, right? And even with sanctuary cities, you can go, well, aren't they violating people's rights? They probably are. But if you have a state leader that's okay with that, nothing's going to change. And we can use Illinois as an example, right? They're okay with Chicago being a sanctuary city because the governor wants a sanctuary state. Now, that hasn't happened here in Georgia, okay? Because we do have Republican leadership that will more than likely step in and say, no, stop that. We're not doing that. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I will definitely link this, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a breakdown because even in Texas, they've got 13 cities, 5 of the mayors are Democrat, 8 are Republican. But then, if you get into some of these other places like Arizona, 6 are Democrat, Florida, 6 are Democrat, even though they have Republican leadership at the top, right? North Carolina, they've got 5 Democrats. See, the further you go down on a lot of these states, there's like no Republicans or independents. The Democrats are running at the local level is what I meant to say. Yeah. Okay. So those are things that we got to remember. Yeah. So 77% of the states listed here, just these states, are predominantly democratically led cities within these states. And Black Flag, thank you so much for joining us this morning, reposting the stream. And he says, good day to you, Black America. Stay warm. Thank you. And enjoy. Yes, yes, yes. So tomorrow is going to be an open mic broadcast. We're going to do open mic. I'm going to be doing a little bit of, just recollection, remembering the past year. How they'll do like, hey, what did you enjoy about this year? And what did you think was one of those top stories? So I'm going to do something a little bit like that. But again, it's going to be open mic. So if you would like to be a part of the show tomorrow, please email me at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com so I can send you a mic, or you can also direct message me on X and I will send you a link through there. But with that, we're going to end our broadcast for today. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. We're almost to 200 subscribers on YouTube. So I want to thank everybody that is subscribing and watching and reposting this content to get the truth out there. Really looking forward to going into the new year. So remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. And we will see you tomorrow.